All right, last kind of theory / model in the chapter is called the residual distribution model, and it's one of these things where it kind of tells you what it is in its name. It says you're going to distribute whatever you have left over, aka the residual distribution. All right, so it starts out by saying that, look, a firm's optimal distribution ratio is basically determined by four things. The preference that investors have between capital gains and dividends. Now, this is going to change per investor, right? Like each investor is going to have different preferences here. And the firm doesn't really have any control over that, right? That investors that are attracted to high dividend firms are going to go to high dividend firms, and investors that are attracted to high capital gains are going to go to firms that pay out low dividends and high capital gains. Okay, so that one we have no control of. But what we do have control of is the next three. Sorry, I'm trying to get one of my dogs to not go lick my other dog without yelling. All right, the next three things are under the firm's control. Firm's investment opportunities, the firm's target capital structure, and the firm's availability and costs of external capital. Investment opportunities, that's all about capital budgeting, right? All those positive NPV projects. Target capital structure is going to be determined by our capital structure policy. And then the availability and our cost of capital, think about that as being our dealings and our conversations that we've had with WAC. Those three things together will determine the optimal distribution ratio for the firm that we can control, right? Yes, it also depends on the investor, but we can't control that. We just have to be consistent. And so when designing this optimal distribution ratio, one way we can get at that optimal distribution ratio is using what's called the residual distribution model. Technical definition: firms should pay dividends only when there are more earnings available than are needed to support the optimal capital budget. Simplest way to think of residual distribution policy. Number one, fund projects. Sounds easy enough, right? Number two, pay out leftovers. Done. That's it. Do your projects first, because remember how a firm grows. Remember how a firm maximizes shareholder value. They pursue positive NPV projects. And remember that whole idea of capital rationing back in the capital budgeting chapter? Not good, right? It's not good we have the capital ration. That means we leave positive NPV projects on the table. So this says projects come first, and then you can pay out whatever you have left over. Now, if you want some more specific steps that are a little bit better than fund projects, pay out leftovers. Technical steps, the four technical steps: determine the optimal capital budget. So that would be basically to take all the positive NPV projects that you can. Determine the amount of equity needed to finance that budget given the target capital structure. So look at the percentage of debt that you use versus the percentage of equity. And the one that we want to focus on is the equity portion, right? How much of my capital budget has to come from equity? It says use reinvested earnings to meet the equity requirements to the extent possible, aka use retained earnings, right? Because it's the cheapest source of funding we have, and we already have it. And then it says to pay dividends or repurchase stock only if more earnings are available than are needed to support that optimal capital budget. Okay, sounds enough. Then we pay dividends or we do a repurchase. Simple as that. It goes back. I know I'm going to draw this is the third time I'm drawing it this chapter, right? It basically says use your net income and your retained earnings to do projects first. And then if you have anything left over here from net income, go ahead and pay it out. Simple, right? That's residual distribution model. Now, we can look at a very simple example of it, which I will put into a separate video, just to make sure that I don't run out of time doing residual distribution. I don't think I can do all of it in one. And that way the math stays separate than the concepts sort of thing.